Yeah, I guess I don't really have a clear-cut question. I guess I just kind of wanted to talk to you. Um, I think my question is like, what it feels like in my life right now is that there's sort of like stuckness happening. Like, it feels like energetic stuckness, but also just like in the movement of my life. I can actually feel it right now, like energetically. I remember if you remember like my throat chakra was like acting up like at the
Yeah,
retreat.
yeah,
Yeah, but it's also in like the stomach. So I'm having a bit of trouble like getting that like energy like moving.
yeah,
Or and it feels like my energy body feels quite dense.
yeah,
Especially during the silent sitting a few minutes or 45 minutes or so ago.
yeah.
And yeah, so I'm having a bit of trouble with like I remember your take on like I think when I asked you questions was like it's important for you to do body stuff to like keep the energy moving and such. Um, so it seems like I'm struggling a bit with that, and
Yeah.
yeah.
What
So
does your day-to-day life consist of? Like, do you feel stuck in your day-to-day life as well, or is it?
yeah,
Are you still
yeah.
in
That's
Amsterdam? And
I'm still in Amsterdam. I'm chilling with my brothers in my family's apartment,
yeah,
and kind of like a lazy lifestyle. Like when I came back from the retreat, there was like a sense of wonder and sort of yeah, and I really felt like following the sense of wonder, and then like that seemed to fall away or
yeah, yeah,
get covered up, or and it was like the heart really wanted to express, and it
yeah,
was at first it was with very simple things like, oh, I feel like playing the guitar, like that seems like a I really
yeah,
want to learn this song, and I was like following that, and then as I was like interacting with my brothers, I don't know, like something, yeah, it's I fell back in like old patterns,
mm,
and so it seems like what I'm kind of believing is like that my freedom and like happiness and letting the heart speak
yeah,
depend on like me being having my life circumstances together or making the right
yeah,
choices or
yeah.
yeah.
What happens to us is that so so you go back to your family and you go back to what's familiar, and you you begin to act out your familiar patterns with them.
Yeah.
And that's okay, that's not actually a problem. So you'll have a particular dynamic with each member of your family. And your character, in a way, will have been partly created at school and outside of the family. But your character will also have been largely formed by the family. So the way that your family interacts with you. So say if you're the role of the scapegoat in the family. So say if when you were growing up, this is just an example to to make it extreme so people can see what I'm trying to say. So
Mm.
say if you from a very young age your parents, maybe you're a bit different from your siblings and your parents began to blame you for things. So if there was spilt milk in the kitchen, then they would be like, Brian, was that you? And they would always put you down, not consciously, more unconsciously, but it's like they would scapegoat you, like things would become your fault. And say if you're a bit different at school, then suddenly they would pick up on that and highlight it, and it would become more of a thing. And then you drop out of university. I know that you did that recently, and then
Hmm.
it becomes a big thing. And there's like this dynamic in the family. This is just an example where you're a scapegoat,
Yeah.
and nobody's really conscious of the games that are happening in the family because it's so complex that people spend years in therapy trying to understand family dynamics. But when you go back to your family, then I'm sure you take on that role and you take on what they see. And then you do your regular responses. You defend against it, you push away, you become very passive, whatever it is that
Yeah.
the way that you defend against it.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you kind of become this character, and then there's a seeking to try to avoid certain things and try to get to certain things, but it all happens very subtly. It's all happening unconsciously.
Yeah,
So you
try to
go
avoid
back,
all of it.
yeah, and you become someone with them. So this is your regular way of being because you spent so much time with your family, and then you create this seeking energy that doesn't want to feel the pain of it, because there's lots of painful interactions that happen with humans, partly because we're so all, like society as a whole is very unconscious, and there's lots of weird games going on, and people believe that they're separate entities with free will and choice that is walking around. So there's lots of odd things that we do to each other, and not very nice things that we do to each other, and also nice things as well. And we're not honest. So when somebody hurts our feelings, we're not honest. What might come up is rage towards them or hate towards them. But really, what's happening in the moment is I feel really vulnerable now. Like what you said made me feel very vulnerable. And we're not honest and genuine. We tell these lies, this rage and this anger, and then we get stuck in this identity of the rage and the anger. Like, my brother's such an asshole, I hate him, he's such a pain in the ass. And then we kind of create this identity of you're superior to this person, but really underneath it is this vulnerability.
Yeah.
And this is happening all the time in family dynamics.
Yeah.
And this is why, like they say, you know, if you go back and you maintain peace with your family or something, then you're truly enlightened. Or a psychologist would say, you know, if you manage to go back to your family and stay true to yourself for at least half an hour, then that means that you're pretty free of your dynamics. Just half an hour.
Yeah,
so it's really like intensive going back to the family and like staying true and integral to yourself. Being true and integral to yourself is not enlightenment. But what happens if you're identified is when you're not being integral, you're constantly making up lies about yourself, things that aren't true, and living in stories and fantasies about who you are and what others are. Like, I hate them, or they're such a pain in the ass, or they did this to me, or she did that to me. And these things aren't necessarily true. And there's lots of mental activity that is based around that. And then what happens when there's lots of seeking that happens and that appears and manifests is our energy body closes down. So we become very contracted. So we firstly get like uncomfortable sensations in our body, and then we contract, and then there's what I would call suffering that appears. And then from that suffering, it's hard to know what you want or don't want, because everything kind of feels uncomfortable. It's kind of hard to find the inspiration or know when you want to play the guitar or don't want to play the guitar.
Yeah, it's like it's tough to be like open-hearted, or like there's not enough trust for that.
Yeah.
But then there's blame. Yeah, there's blame towards my family, or towards, it's really only my brother and his girlfriend. But yeah, I could feel like when I came back, I was out of money, so I would have stayed like somewhere else, but because I really got the sense that would have been better. But I could feel like the games are gonna come back, and like the same games they're gonna try to play the same dynamics with me, and like, you know, I see it now clearly, like that I don't want that, and but it happened anyway.
It is really hard, especially when people aren't into this subject. But you can sometimes change it to an extent by trying to be as honest as you can. So if they say something and you feel a big reaction, like try to see underneath that, like what it does. Most of the time it makes us feel vulnerable or afraid or not good enough. And trying to express that to people in a really honest way can have a huge impact. But I know it's complex. Like I struggle to maintain being genuine around certain family members. Like it's not the easiest thing to do, because they're in a very different world, and they've got a very strong idea maybe about you or who you are or what you've done to them. So.
Yeah, I suppose maybe at the core of it, it's just like fear of being judged or seen a certain way or perceived as weak, or you know, open to attack if I'm vulnerable. But
and so throat. So the sacral chakra, that is fear, anxiety, feeling like you're not able to look after yourself. Like, so the sacral is about work, like feeling stable, feeling like you can look after yourself, you can work, you
Right.
can produce. And it's also sexuality as well. And then the throat chakra is about expression. So not being honest, not being able to say what you want, what you need, what you don't want, being able to express yourself, being heard.
Yeah, these are the current issues in my life, I guess.
Yeah,
There's negativity around those as well and such.
yeah,
So I guess everything shows up for a reason, but
yeah,
like there's
totally.
a like
Yeah,
something wants to fix it, you know?
yeah, and the body is so kind. Like the, it's telling you what your issues are by having pain in the throat and in the sacral chakra.
Yeah,
So that's
that's
all
actually
happening. So there's also, so you can also see, so there's that that's happening, and then you can also see that there's something that's watching that. So there's something that knows that's happening, and that's always free. But when these energies are tight, so when the energies in the chakra are tight, it can feel like your consciousness and who you are and those energies are all one thing. So you feel like really condensed into those energies. You feel that this small person that's not good enough, that can't speak out. That's not conscious normally. That's normally unconscious. But maybe you're
yeah.
conscious of it.
Yeah,
And it
and then
becomes
yeah.
really narrow who you are. But so you don't actually have to fix the feelings in your body. But that I suggest that you do, because it will make your life better and easier. And when they're really tight, there's lots of seeking, which makes you feel very small. But you don't actually have to fix them, because if you really like pay attention to what's happening now, you'll see that who you truly are is consciousness, and that's free. Like, consciousness isn't bound into that. Like, who you are isn't this story of Brian that has messed up or not messed up or should work or shouldn't work or can say something or can't say something. Who you are is that which is watching now, which is the sound of my voice, which is the room, which is the space. And that's inherently free and expansive. And it holds everything. It holds your siblings' judgments, it holds your insecurity or vulnerability. When there's lots of seeking going on, though, that feels like it's contained and stuck to the person. So it feels like the person is conscious and the person is suffering and the person is experiencing. Whereas who you truly are now isn't a thing. It's not a thought, it's not a dynamic, it's not a behavior, it's not a story. It's not your relationship with your brother. It's not their disapproval, their like.
And so allowing these like energies to open or integrate is beneficial for
But
allowing this understanding to land, right?
most probably, like, I mean, I can't guarantee anything. In the end, I don't know. I'm just here, I'm just present. But from the experience and from what's been learned, and my sort of intuition is that when you're deeply suffering, there's lots of seeking and there's lots of focus on time. So relaxing that relaxes the timeline, relaxes the seeking, and then there is more of a possibility or more of an openness to this message. Like, so if you like, if I think about a family member of mine, like, they're not into the subject, and like some of them are really like deeply suffering and struggling with life, like they're so concerned about their problems and the stress of their everyday, that to say to them, you know, this moment is beauty, this moment has freedom inherently in it, would be patronizing and condescending to them, and they would most probably feel angry about that.
Mm.
So you can see that relaxing these types of dynamics, relaxing what most people are constantly stuck in a loop about, you know, money and love, when that's more relaxed, then there's the possibility to really hear that nothing is looking now. There is nobody that's looking. And so the person that feels like it's looking out of your eyes is an illusion. That person is a play happening in the dream. So that person is, so if you're sitting in a film, like in a cinema, and you're watching a film, you're the audience member watching a film, that person is a film playing. And what's happened is you, as the audience member, believe that you are now the film. So you believe that you're the character in the film, rather than that which is watching the film. And that which watches the film loves everything, like every part of it. It loves the dramas, the tragedies, the beauty, the orgasms, the travelling, the staying still. It's totally hypnotized by its own beauty of watching. And it's unconditioned love. It loves everything. You could say it's God. But then what happens when there's lots of seeking is that person, the consciousness becomes lost in the dream and believes it's a character, a singularity in the dream, and then suffering arises in the dream for the person.
Yeah, it's like it feels like a dull, like hypnosis, sort of like
yeah. Yeah, it is.
And then the person tries to get out of it, and it just kind of reinforces everything.
Yeah, it goes around in itself to get out of the dream. The best that you can do on the human level is looking at your illusions, looking at your dynamics. If this is what happens, like you don't have the choice really. You appear to have the choice, but looking at the dynamics and settling down the person, and then at the same time continuously recognizing there's something that's watching. There's something else here that's free. So listening to that message, or putting your attention back into consciousness, listening to non-duality, like, so recognizing that again and again and again. And then at the same time, like, calming the person down, seeing your dynamic, seeing your discomfort with the work at the moment, of future, of family, of your position in the family, of not feeling good enough or feeling judged. And just relaxing that energy through body work, through Osho breathing, like chakra breathing. There's so much stuff happening in Amsterdam. And if you haven't got money for it, there's always training. Like, so I used to go to acupuncture, like the training acupuncture center. So the trainees that were finishing their 3-year degree in acupuncture, and then I'd go there as like a specimen to be tested, like for them to try and practice on. So these types of things you can do, like Osho chakra meditation is on the internet. You might have to have Apple.
Yeah, I've done this a few times.
Yeah,
it's on Spotify as well. Yeah. Yeah. So there needs to be some kind of like, well, if there's some kind of consistency to this, then there can be opening on the energetic level. But I notice, like, if I just follow the old patterns, which doesn't feel very good, then it just kind of like stays there, and then like you fall into like victim role or something like that.
And that's really great, recognizing that, because that will change something. So you recognize that following the old patterns doesn't work, so there needs to be a new way. The old patterns feel familiar, and they feel like comfortable in a way because you've done them so many times.
But feels very dead.
Work. Yeah, it might feel dead, but it feels comfortable to do it. So it feels comfortable maybe now to go and speak to your brother in a certain way. It maybe feels dead, but it's more comfortable than trying something new or challenging it, or going and doing chakra breathing, or joining a chat group about this subject, or
things. And it's funny because, like, if I wouldn't have gone to this house and wouldn't have gone back to these dynamics physically, maybe this is the person like trying to say, like, oh, like if it would have been different, if I could get things differently, then it'd be better, or I'd be energetically more sound, or be able to open up more.
Yeah, and that's an unknown thing. We just know what's here, and we can speculate, but we just know what's here, and that's kind of like going to create suffering more than likely, thinking about what you could have or would have or should have done. You can speculate about it, so in the future you make a different decision, but then it's kind of useless to think about that you've got now, and what is it that's happening now. And the mind runs off on coulda, shoulda, might have, and likes to make a big suffering story about it, or tell you you've done something wrong or that life is wrong. And then you can go deeper in what is it that I feel underneath that. I feel afraid. I feel like I don't know how to live my life.
Mm.
I'm
So
not sure I
admitting,
can rely on my own choices. So that's a really interesting thought, because
yeah,
the body's got to make choices, so it appears to make choices, but sometimes the personality structure can feel like it doesn't know if it can rely on it, which can be taught by your family. Your parents might have always told you off when you were growing up, telling you you're making the wrong decision, and then you become a person that doesn't rely on their own choices, and so is always in doubt and insecurity. So it's just seeing that. So that's not true. That's not truth that my choices are bad. It's not truth that I'll make mistakes. It's something that's appearing in this body, giving this life a certain drama or a certain experience. So that's just a thought that the human's having. So that's not true. So what is it that you are beyond that? That you keep going back and back and back. So you're not somebody that makes bad choices. You're not somebody that's small. And we get like these energies come up, so we see our family and we feel like there's someone that's made bad choices, and then our energy shuts down, and then the sort of stories run, like if I should have done that, if I could have done this, if I did do that, and then we believe that to be true, and we spend like the next 2-3 days thinking about that, or the next 10 years thinking about that. And what's beyond that? Underneath it, it's a child that was conditioned to believe that it was a bad child, which is a lie. It's not who you are. It's a conditioning in the body. So who you are right now is this moment, and that's all you ever have. So it's like moving your attention back to that which you are. So seeing the stories for what they are, seeing the conditions for what they are, and then coming back to something deeper. They don't have to leave, but it's just seeing them for what they are and not spending 10 years lost in the story of it.
Yeah.
And seeking to resolve it in some way.
Yeah, therapy. And so,
and all this stuff that I'm saying about you, when I come up with these things, like if I was doing a one-to-one session with you, I've said this to you in the retreat,
Germany.
I would try to get you to explore a lot more of what you're feeling. I'm just speculating. I'm not even like assuming that's what you feel. I'm just saying whatever comes to mind. So it's not you. I'm not saying your dynamics. It's not like, listen, now Lisa's pointed out all my dynamics. I'm just speaking, just to give people an idea, because there's other people listening to this of what I mean. But if it was just you and me, then I would go deeper into what it is you feel and see that it's not true, and then see when it's manifesting and when you're lost in that story. So it manifests when I try to look for a new job. I keep thinking I'm bad, or I should have, I might have, or I'll make a mistake. So then seeing that and then bringing your attention back to presence, like that's not true. I'm not going to make a mistake. It's not going to be a disaster.
Yeah, there's like a lack of trust in the moment, or like a lack of trust of like following that natural sort of joy, I think.
Yeah, that's conditioned. Schooling or your parents will have conditioned you in that way, and it's just, and it's also genetic as well. So it's also from past lives or karma, whatever you want to call it. But it's not a truth. It's a phenomena that's arising now in the dream, and who you are is this vast spaciousness that's unaffected. That's who you are. And then you've got the Brian character that's playing out in that. That's trying, and there's an energy that's trying to like suck that consciousness into that Brian character and make you the experiencer, you as Brian the experiencer, you as Brian as the controller, you as Brian as the doer.
Yeah, it feels like oppressing like the joy and wonder.
As the center of the world. Whereas Brian is something that's happening in the dream. Who you are is unaffected by the dream. It's the whole entire dream, but unaffected by the dream. It's free. It's this stillness, this spaciousness that's right here. It's this detachment from the personality structure. This letting go of the personality structure. And then the personality structure, more than likely, if it's been conditioned for 20, 30, 40 years, that it makes bad choices, more than likely there will be pain around choices the whole entire time, but it won't be you anymore. And it won't go into the suffering realms that it did before of your bad choices, your mistakes, what you should have done, what you could have done. It won't be lost in this matrix of you.
And there's nothing to be done about like that letting go. That just like kind of happens. Or
Yeah, everything just kind of happens. I mean, we just don't know anything. We're just here, and there's just everything, and it's a big mystery. And we've got theories on it as humans as to, and those theories are all based on what the way in which we survived in the past. Like our language is based on survival and what's the best way of surviving, and then we make theories about our environment, about our situation, about our life, dependent on something or dependent on that.
yeah.
And it's not true at all. We're just here suspended in the middle of nothing, experiencing. It's so vulnerable, it's so empty, it's so vast. It's total not knowing your true essence. Right here. The character knows, but the wise character knows it knows nothing. So the character thinks it knows things, it thinks it knows that it's in Netherlands. But then the wise character also realizes, I know nothing. Nothing, nothing, nothing.
Yeah, I feel that feels a lot more true.
Mm,
And like simultaneously I could feel like the character like tries to hold on and
mm,
out of fear.
mm. Yeah, it's terrified of not being anything. To really let go into it. Like, who would you be? What would your family think of you? What would you do?
Yeah, it's like the character wants to know like how to apply this and like, but that doesn't feel true either. That also feels like
Yeah,
it's kind of, yeah, maybe
kind of. It
feels.
wants to hold on to something. It wants some security, and that's okay. If it wants to know where to go, but just see your true essence doesn't know where to go. Your true essence is just watching, just experiencing now, not knowing anything. And then the character is like, okay, which way? Left or right? Up or down?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank
A
you.
pleasure. Yeah, really lovely speaking to you, and thank you for being so
Yeah,
honest and open. I'm sure that was super helpful for a lot of people listening.
yeah, for sure.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thanks,
Lots
Lisa.
of love. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.